Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another very interesting session with Suresh Kochattil ji. Thanks, Suresh ji, for coming again. So, starting with the first piece of news, and you have a huge development. Is that huge news that killing of top Naxal leader Madvi Hidma by the Andhra Pradesh police is the top. It is a huge development and it's a huge achievement in the last 24 hours. So could you, elaborate on this person and how, it's huge news in Andhra Pradesh, especially?
Well, Madhvi Hidma's elimination marks an end to the Naxal problem to a large extent. I'll tell you why it happened. He rose from being a very, very low foot soldier in the CPI Maoist hierarchy and is one of the very, very few tribal Naxal leaders. Usually, the Naxal leadership, mostly since it began in West Bengal, but then spread through the Dandakaranya area. But the early Naxal leadership, including the Central Committee and others, which is the highest decision making Politburo, were all from the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh and now Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And most of them were highly educated engineers. Some of them were Brahmins, a couple of them were Reddis. And so, if you equate a Naxal movement with, harassment by the zamindars, which was a reason, the land holding was an issue, the non-development in tribal areas was an issue. But if you look at Ganapati or Ramakrishna or the earliest top leadership of the Naxal movement, none of them belonged to the tribal part of it. And none of them allowed a non-Telugu speaking leadership to come up within their ranks. And Hidma was one of the few. And at 50, when he's supposed to have passed away at 50, this is one of the earliest, urges, youngest of now's leaders who passed away. So basically, the entire thing boils down to the fact that the Naxal leadership at one time, which was 42 people, 42 Central Committee members, are now down to hardly anything. And now they're just down to 12 of them. And what is the future? That is the most important thing. And of course, the killing of Hidma, even though it's crouched in the usual encounter portfolio, we all know how these things work out very well. There was a huge pressure from the Chhattisgarh side with the Chhattisgarh police, the CRPF, and others, and even on the Maharashtra side from Gadricholi, that the Naxal leaders tried to slip out. Maloji Venugopal surrendered. He was a big fish in the entire thing. So was about 600 to 700 cadres on the Gadricholi side, about 400 to 500 on the Chhattisgarh side. But the Andhra side was relatively quiet. There was not much of action happening on the Andhra side because the Andhra Pradesh police and to a large extent the Telangana police had wiped out the Naxal leadership from their area, or at least driven them out from their area. Even today, we know that the top leadership of the Naxal movement, most of them have passed away. The senior leadership, the erstwhile leadership. A couple of them are in Nepal, like Ganapati, who's unwell. He's supposed to be in Nepal. But others have all had their own issues, being in the 70s and the early 80s, and most of them have disappeared. So the new crop of Naxal leaders are emanated from the bottom, and the Madhavi Hidma was one of them. And being a tribal, and that too from the ST community, he had his own hold on the people of his area. He spoke the local language, Gond language. He could speak Telugu, he could speak Hindi, he could speak Odia. So all that triangle, to a large extent, even Marathi, I believe, because these groups operated in the dense jungles of Chhattisgarh, then the bordering Maharashtra, and sometimes this used to slip into the agency areas of Andhra Pradesh, which is Srikakulam, Vijayanagaram areas. So the elimination and the deadline set out by Home Minister Amit Shah reportedly, I never see a public statement, but the mandate given to the police officials of all the states was that Hidma had to be finished off before November the 30th, and they achieved this with 12 days to spare. And the entire Naxal movement, as Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah has been talking about, would be finished off by the 30th of March. Now, to a large extent, that is actually happening, but to completely get rid of them is impossible. They will exist in certain pockets. But what happens, Jaydev, is why did this all happen? One was the induction of a large number of young, highly motivated IPS officers in different parts, either in CRPF or in Chhattisgarh police or in the Andhra Pradesh police and even the Maharashtra police to a large extent. Well trained, combat units like the Greyhounds of Andhra Pradesh and the Cobra units in Chhattisgarh, they were all kind of after the Naxals. And for any Naxal movement to be get rid of, it's not so easy. I mean, if you look at it that way, it's easy to say, we'll shoot a few people dead and the Naxal movement will die out. It has to do with development. This is what the Naxals exploited to a large extent over the last 75 odd years, especially in the last 60 odd years, you can say. There was zero development in the tribal areas of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra. But what we have seen in the last decade is the confidence of building roads into Naxal villages. Because the Naxals never allowed roads to be built, and the first targets always used to be the contractors and the workers who are building roads. They used to blow them up. And even the roads were a target for any police movement. And there used to be what is now called, what is popularly known as the road opening party. And ROP was very, very thing. They used to clear the roads before the security forces could roll in. But Madvi Hidma's role in the elimination of almost martyrdom of almost 70 odd CRPF Jawans in Chhattisgarh was a major turning point for the Naxal movement because he became the numero uno military strategist after that. Then we saw the deadly attack on the Congress leaders, in which almost 20 of them were killed in an ambush in Chhattisgarh. And that was another thing that happened. Over the years, what is really happening in Chhattisgarh was that the elimination of police officials, police officers, and staff, and of course, political leaders, but different people, but different Naxal units actually kind of sapped the morale of the armed forces. And then now what has happened is that after the last ambush, in which almost 22 police officials were killed, we saw redoubtable Home Minister Amit Shah saying that we will now go after them and we will finish them off. And Madhvi Hidma's elimination is a part of that process. Now, as of I understand, there are only about 12 central committee members left, most of them old. They can't be really called a top one. Tiparati Tirupati, he's one. He may take over as the next. But it is like that Israeli game, when Israel says when a Hezbollah gets a new chief, they go after them and then finish them off. Or Hamas gets a new leadership and Israel finishes them off. The Indian police, the CRPF, and the state polices of Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh are following the same philosophy. If somebody springs up as a leader and they finish him off, because then what happens is the lower level cadres get demotivated. They have no leadership to follow, and that is the problem for the Naxal units now. And I think the development that has come to Sukma, Dantewada, Bastar, Gadricholi, all these areas seeing huge development in terms of schools, in terms of clinics, small clinics, in terms of small hospitals, in terms of television sets, in terms of community centers, in terms of rural development. That was what is turned the trick around because the Naxal movement thrives. And I remember this when I was in college, when I was doing my graduation in Osmania University, in a college in Osmania University, we used to have the Naxal outfits called PDSU and RSU, Radical Students Union, and all that. They were the recruiting teams for the Naxals. They used to pick up youngsters from engineering colleges because they needed engineers to put together bombs, assemble explosive devices like what we saw recently in the Alpha, the Kashmiri doctor gangs doing it, something very similar. But over the last 20 years, 15 years especially, the number of youngsters moving into Naxal units has kind of rapidly declined, especially the educated ones. They are not willing to eke out a living in the forest, walking kilometers and kilometers every day, being under the target of the police. They wanted regular jobs. They wanted to get to cities. They wanted to study. So the entire Naxal movement's bottom kind of flattened out. And that is what happened to the Naxal movement today. And frankly, having seen this as close quarters, in Usmania University, which is one of the bedrock of the Naxal movements, along with Kakatiya University in Warangal, and then REC Warangal, now called NIT. These were the hunting grounds for Naxals. And the moment you remove the inequalities from the bottom of the pyramid, the entire thing goes away. That is why you don't have Naxalism in West Bengal or Kerala. After all, Naxalism started from a village called Naxalbari in West Bengal, but today you don't have any Naxalism in either in West Bengal or Kerala. Long, long ago, they disappeared from there. Reason being land. If you redistribute land properly, instead of having zamindars holding 1,000 acres and 2,000 acres, if you distribute the land properly in an equitable manner, then you have a kind of situation where the Naxals lose their entire pitch to the tribals, saying that you are being discriminated against. And that is what the governments over the years have successfully done. And today, the Naxal movement is tottering at the edge of what is an abyss.
Yeah. And also coming to next news, Sureshi, and this is a huge development, and it is with regards to Javed Ahmed Siddiqui. He's the founder of Al-Falah University, and he has been taken. He is arrested by the ED for questioning, and also for terror financing linked money laundering case. So a lot of investigation is going on, and search operations in 19 locations in Delhi, including the premises of Al-Falah University. And also, let us remember that Al-Falah is a trust, it's a charitable trust. So, the main source of revenue comes from the student fees. And now the ED alleges that crores of rupees were generated as proceeds of crime by fraudulently inducing students with false accreditation claims. And also, investigators claim that the trust funds were allegedly diverted to family owned entities with construction and catering contracts awarded to firms linked to Siddiqui's wife and children. And also, there are unverified claims of foreign funding. So, this is a huge development.
Yeah, Al-Falah founder, if you know him very well, more than anything else, he was a fraud. And we know that he kind of collected a lot of money from people in his earlier avatar before he started the Al-Falah University for a real estate project, claiming that he would deliver 100 flats, 200 apartments, and that kind of stuff. And he disappeared. And one of the founders, co-founders of Al-Falah, was actually arrested in Hyderabad. He was on the running for the last 25 years, and he was caught just 3 days ago, I think, by the Maharashtra ATS. Uh, these people, I don't know, it kind of stumps me. I forget these frauds. Okay, they are fraud, they're committing fraud. But what were the UGC doing? What was AICTE doing? What was the accreditation agencies like, who give this AAA rating and all that kind of stuff, NAC doing? Were they all sleeping? This is what my question is. This guy is running a university. He's a fraud. He spent, I think, almost 7 to 8 months in Tihar jail, if not more, for the same fraud which I described to you before. And he and I think his brother also was there with him. And how could somebody like this start a university, a medical college? What are the NMC doing? Now everybody is washing the hands of saying, you know what, we are removing the accreditation. We are kind of giving notices to him. What happened before that? Don't you check the background of a person who wants to start a university? You know, Jaydev, 70 acres for this university was given during the term of Huda, when Huda was the chief minister. We can understand that. The Congress ecosystem works for the Muslims and the Muslim organizations. And they gave 70 acres of land free of cost in Faridabad to set up this university. So that is the starting point of the investigation, is why that was given. An obvious question would be that we wanted to bring in more universities into Haryana. Fair enough. But what happens after that? How did they get the accreditation for a university? How did they get the nod for a medical college? And other institutions, how did they even claim that they have AAA rating and all that kind of stuff from NAC when they actually are not even having it for? So it was all these years when they're peddling it on their website and other places. What was NAC doing? Now everybody is stepped in, EC has stepped in, they have stepped in, ED has stepped in, CBI will get into it. All that stuff is fine. That is all because it started in Srinagar with a young IPS officer who went after these fellows. And we know the rest of the story. I don't need to tell you that. But the point I'm trying to make is there are hundreds of such frauds all over the country. Not all of them may be associated with terror. In fact, very few of them. But the frauds are still there. You go during the time of T.R. Balu, all this fraud started. This deemed university business started during his time. It is time the UGC is held to task. They are questioned as to what is this deemed university business all about. What are the standards for a university to be set up? What is the background check against those university officials? NAC, we saw a couple of, not couple, a lot of instances where NAC members who were coming to check, who were coming to give the NAC ratings were caught taking bribes and they were put in jail. The entire education system in our country is a big question mark. And Al-Falah University, which was used as a front for the terror organization, is one such example of it. There are other money laundering organizations running universities, running colleges, and medical colleges too. We need all these to be investigated. Al-Falah is going taking up all the space right now because of the terror link. There are maybe other dozen of them around. Who knows? Who's investigating them? This is something that we need to question, Jaydev, and I think time has come for somebody to be kind of asked questions, uncomfortable questions regarding this. The problem, I'll tell you what, it is like, you have a fire accident, like we had one in Hyderabad, near Hyderabad in Kurnool, where a bus caught fire and 19 passengers unfortunately perished. There was huge checking for the next 1 week. Every vehicle inspector was on the road checking for the fitness certificate, that, this, insurance. And after that, everything quietened down. Nothing is happening now. This is something very similar. A month from now or 2 months from now, you and me will be debating on something else. We will forget about what happened in Al-Falah or whatever universities you have it. It's only those people who lost their families in the Delhi blast and for those policemen and forensic experts who lost their lives in Nagaon that they will remember all this. Rest of us will forget and carry on with our lives. The problem is simple. We don't have a culture of accountability in our country. Everything is chalta hai. Everything can be bribed and got. And it is time, not just the Al-Falah stuff, but every shady university in this country, every fake PhD. There are so many guys walking around with PhDs which were conferred to them on an honorary basis. I can understand APJ Abdul Kalam ji being given an honorary PhD. He's more than deserving. But there are so many guys who come to this country, give PhD at some public function, take 5 or 10 lakhs from those people, and they grandly attach a doctor in front of the name. An honorary PhD or if such fake PhDs need to be called out. What is the UGC doing again? What is the AICT doing again? We need answers from these people, Jaydev, and Al-Falah University is one such example where the frontal organization was used in shady activities. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what, the founders of Al-Falah will just wash their hands off and saying, oh, we didn't know all this was happening in our university. We were also unaware about it because this guy has not been charged on any terror count. He might be later at a later stage. But to prove that will be extremely difficult because they'll get five-star lawyers like Kapil Sibal, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, Colin Gonzalez, Indira Jai Singh, and Prashant Bhushan, and all these kind of characters. And they will be out in no time. This is what we need to question, Jaydev, and very, very strongly, this needs to be asked for. We need answers for all the wrong things that are happening in this country. To a large extent, Modi government has been able to clean up their act in terms of other parts of the organization, other parts of the bureaucracy. But we need to clean up this too.
Yeah. So, in another shocking, incident, and it's this is a shocking development, is that there's a photograph of the Delhi terror accused Dr. Shaheen Saeed and Dr. Musamil in a car showroom purchasing a Maruti Brezza. And the interesting part is that, according to investigations, that the car was bought in Shaheen Saeed's name, and the mode was a full cash payment, has raised suspicion. So, if these reports are true, it's a full cash payment. How can you go to a car showroom and just have a full cash payment and buy a Brezza or any other car in India?
Good question, Jaydev. Question is, what is cash? That's a question. Now, the car showroom technically cannot accept cash beyond 20,000 rupees. We all know the income tax rules very clearly. What would they would claim is that these people issued a check for 20, for whatever the amount a Brezza would cost, whatever, close to about 20 lakhs, including all the fittings and everything, or maybe 18 lakhs. That these was paid by check. Now the question obviously would arise is, the usually the income tax department gets tipped off when the car is bought in cash. But if it is bought in check, that can payment can be traced back to the account and checked if it is an income tax paid money that is there in the account. This needs investigation because we've seen the stories that happened after the Delhi blast, Jaydev. We were told that there was money being raised to buy second-hand cars and new cars. Now, my obvious question is, if somebody is planning to blast a bomb, they would rather use a second-hand car than a new car, isn't it? A new car obviously would be used for recce and other purposes and to drive around. In fact, the stories, if you read that 20 odd lakhs which is raised originally was supposed to be for buying 10 cars, used cars. And we saw that in case of the blast in Delhi, that the car moved in from Haryana, original owner, one Salman, to somebody in Noida, and then it went all the way back to Pulwama. So obviously, this needs to be tracked. Another fact, I mean, that beats reason here. When you transfer a vehicle, you're supposed to get it registered. That is, the guy whom you're selling it to has to get the car registered. Why is that not happening? Why was no questions being asked? This is something as basic, and I would tell our those who are watching our show also that when you sell your vehicle, please ensure that within a week you ensure that the guy who's buying it from you actually gets it registered. But most of us do what? We give it to this used car showrooms where it will lie for months together before it is sold. Until then, somebody would be driving it around. And you know what happened in Sadhvi Pragya's case in Malegaon? She had a motorcycle which she had sold to somebody, but did not get it registered in that person's name, or that person did not get it registered. And what happened? Finally, when somebody put a bomb on that and blasted it off, she got arrested. This is what is going to happen. So obviously, this question of buying cars with cash is a big question. I don't have details about what exactly is cash. Does it mean physical cash or was it paid by check? And that is something that needs investigation. And of course, the money trail. I mean, if you go to many parts of India today, you will find huge Hawala transactions happening. Huge Hawala transactions. The ED is kind of nibbling at the top of the iceberg. There is a huge amount of money that is floating from different parts of the world for various reasons, for missionary activities, for conversions, for terror activities, for investing in real estate and Benami names. All this is happening from across the world. And I don't think we are even privy to 10% of what is really happening. And the Al-Falah case clearly shows that somebody whose annual income would not even match that of buying a car is getting to buy a car. What happened to their source of income? What happened to their accounts in the bank? All these need to be checked out. And surely there is a lot in this.
Yeah. Do you think the 500 rupee note will be demonetized?
No, 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 not really. Not really. See, what was the demonetization all about? I think that entire concept was misunderstood. Is that the high value cash, the high value 2000 rupee note, the 1000 rupee notes. Of course, 2000 came in later, but then that was also withdrawn. Today, it's not in circulation anymore. Was used to hide cash because if you need to hide bundles of 100, it would take up a huge amount of space. And that is what, see, the moment that notes were withdrawn after demonetization, Jaydev, stone throwing in Kashmir stopped totally. You never heard of stone throwing after that. The week after the demonetization, not a single stone throwing incident happened in Kashmir till date, barring a few here and there. Why? Because these people were being paid money using the same fake notes from across the border by Pakistan, and the Pakistani agents were doing it. We all know the story that the RBI sold certain printing machines from the Nasik security press without scrapping it totally, that is, breaking it into small pieces. They sold the entire machine to a party who again took it back, and possibly it landed up with ISI of Pakistan. That, of course, is an investigation that was never done. There was a role of P. Chidambaram in that, and nobody investigated that. And even today, the Modi government has not done anything to investigate that and hold Chidambaram accountable for that. But I don't think 500 rupee note is going to go anywhere because we need certain high denomination currency with us. And that is how, but today, who uses currency, by the way? Today, if you go to any shop, you know it better, I know it better, that everybody is on a digital payment mode using UPI options, a Google Pay or a Phone Pay or a Paytm or whatever it is. Nobody uses, very few people use cash today. And the cash is usually used by traders to store cash, which doesn't have an account. Yesterday, 3 or 4 biryani joints in Hyderabad, big names, got raided for evasion of income tax because obviously very few bills were being raised, and that cash was diverted somewhere. I don't know the full details of it yet, but I saw the news yesterday, very detailed news. But maybe the income tax department will come out with a statement in a couple of days. But cash is here to stay. We need to ensure that we keep reducing the cash flow in the system, and especially after GST, that is really happening.
Yeah, because I do believe that some of the real estate transactions, a part of it at least, there is a cash, component.
There is. I mean, people who are selling, forget we blame the real estate guys for it. Forget the real estate guys. The person who's selling his house, the first question he'll ask the buyer is how much will he give me in black and how much in white. The corruption starts at that point because he doesn't want to show the entire sale income in white because he will have to pay tax on it unless he buys another property in 2 to 3 years' time or invest in another property in 2 to 3 years' time. That is the problem. So the corruption with traders is, yeah, it is there. That is no doubt about it. But it's also there among ordinary citizens. There are very few people who insist on taking payment in white. And to a large extent, I think the big real estate companies don't indulge in all this because anymore, because the home loan component itself is a big part of it. But the remaining part, which is paid out by the buyer as a part of his or her loan component, may be in cash. I don't know. I'm not privy to it. I haven't bought anything in the last 20 years since I bought my apartment. So I'm not really privy to this. But I guess it's reduced to a large extent. But I guess it's still there.
Yeah. So coming to the next piece of news, after how badly Rahul Gandhi lost in Bihar elections, now he has a supporter in the Dot Dot Alliance. He has Akhilesh Yadav supporting him. So this is quite a surprise that he still has some supporters in the Dot Dot Alliance.
Why? You ask the question, why? Tejasvi phased out that music in terms of so-called vote chori. The 64 lakh voters who were removed, not even 1,000 of them, only 1,100 of them came back with appeals, with objections for the names being deleted. What happened to the remaining 64 lakh people? This is a question even the Supreme Court asked the Congress Council that day. And Prashant Bhushan came up with 6 affidavits. All of them were proved to be fake. They were not even voters of Bihar. And he was warned by the Supreme Court. The problem with Stalin or with Pinarayi Vijayan or with Akhilesh Yadav, I'll give you one instance. Forget Akhilesh now. Stalin held an all-party meeting in Chennai, Jaydev, a few weeks ago on the SIR. They passed a resolution opposing SIR because it would deprive the minorities, Dalit and poor of their voting rights. And nothing of that sort happened in Bihar. A dead person cannot get up and vote. And there are thousands and lakhs of people who die over at 5 or 10, and in this case, a 22-year period between the last SIR and this one, which was held in 2002, 2003, and now in 2025. So a lot of people would have passed away. A lot of people would have migrated. And of course, there are a lot of duplicate voters. They were all removed. If they were genuinely there, at least 10% of them, forget 10%, 1% of them would have appealed against it. Because at every BLO office, the posters were put up. That means for every 1,000 voters, there was somebody informing them that their name has been removed. None of them did it. None of them filed an online objection or any sort of objection. Now, when Stalin held a meeting, he had the usual parroting story about what happened in Bihar and all that kind of stuff. And that happened finally when Stalin threatened to file a case in Supreme Court. He filed it. And you know what the petition said? Kapil Sibal argued it out last week. It said there are going to be floods in Tamil Nadu in November and December. So people will be busy, handling the floods. The collectors would be busy. The officials would be busy with the flood relief. And after that, there is Christmas, and after that, there is Pongal. So, not to do SIR now. What happened to the initial objections about poor people being removed? Where in the electoral roll would be made find a mention saying this person is poor or a Dalit? Minorities, I can still understand. The name obviously would be a giveaway. But how? Tell me, how come Stalin didn't find the same objections which was there in the all-party conference in Supreme Court? Why didn't he come up with that? The obvious thing was they should have got thrown out in the Supreme Court. So Akhilesh Yadav objecting to it has the same reason, Jaydev. UP with a bigger voter base than Bihar will see not just 64 lakhs, but mark my word, close to 2.5 to 3 crore people. 2.5 is the minimum, will be out of the rolls. Duplicate voters. You're seeing the flood of people hurrying towards the Bangladesh border today. It's there in all news channels. Who are these people? Why are they running to Bangladesh? It's very obvious that these were the voters. I mean, these are people who are actually scared, and there are people still sitting in India thinking that they will not be detected. They will be detected. It is not an RC that is happening, but an SIR. But SIR is good enough to take care of them. And that is what this is. Akhilesh is worried that is same problem which Congress faced in Bihar in terms of a complete rout, along with RJD, will happen in UP. But look at this. RJD never complained about the results after they were declared. The tweet I saw them of RJD in Hindi attributed to are the leaders Lalu Prasad Yadav and Tejasvi Yadav said very clearly, we lost the election. We will look into it and we'll come back strong. Simple. Unlike Rahul Gandhi, they didn't try and vote chori, that, this, and that nonsense. So Akhilesh Yadav knows he's now, of course, UP is not having an SAR right now, but I guess in the next 3 to 4 months there will be an announcement because UP is due for elections in 2027. So once the election commission completes the 12 states and union territory plus Assam that has been announced now, they will get into UP by possibly next year, early next year, and then we will see the music there also. And sure enough, all these politicians from Pinarayi Vijayan, same thing with Pinarayi Vijayan. Initially, he said, "Oh, minority is being removed," that, and then he goes to the Supreme Court, and what does he say? We have local body elections going on, so please don't do it now. Do it after the local body elections. So objection against SIR is not there anymore. So he was asked by a media guy, "But your objection was against SIR." He said, "Oh, that we will see later. If there is a problem, we will handle that later." So floods in Tamil Nadu, local body elections in Kerala, that is the objection against SIR, not SIR by itself. And these people are kind of number one in terms of hypocrites, in terms of coming with objections, as crazy as Dalits and poor being removed from the electoral rolls. Akhilesh is also seeing the writing on the wall, Jaydev.
Yeah, even Mamta Banerjee of West Bengal, because the Bengal election is next year, right?
Yes. You see, if you're following the Election Commission's updates on Facebook, they are very, very quick to give updates. And I think the most aggressive of all the election commission, state election commissions across the country is West Bengal. I see an update from them every 3 hours saying this district, Dimapur, there, that place, Kuch Bihar, we have done this, we have done that. So many forms have come back, so many forms have been given out. Regular updates happening. The same Mamta Banerjee who threatened that she will not allow the SAR to happen. Now, Tamil Nadu, there's a problem. The local officials say they will not work. They can be suspended as per rules if they don't work. Simple, because the authority is with the election commission now. And the district collectors will face the music. If the government employees don't work, there are other methods to get it done. We can get the teachers to do it. We can get the bank officials to do it, others to do it. The Anganwadi workers can be used. The ASHA workers can be used. So this kind of thing, blackmail that is happening in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, it was enacted by the government employees affiliated to the party unions, will not work. SAR will happen. It's already happening. And all those fake voters who are there, which is, I guess, my guess, like Bihar was about 6.8% of the fake total voters got eliminated. In places like UP, it will be as high as 10 to 11%. And mark my words, the same thing will be there in Tamil Nadu and Kerala and other states.
Yeah, so Suresh, coming to the last point is now with regards to the Islamic terror, especially coming from Bangladesh and Pakistan, and a plot has revealed that there are Hamas style attacks which were planned to happen across India. And according to this plot, involved the arrest of Jasir Bilal Wani, alias Danish, a co-conspirator behind the Red Fort attack. And investigators said that the Jaish-e-Mohammed was in the process of modifying drones to use them as rocket-style bombs for attacking across multiple cities. So this is a huge, concern for India.
Yes, sir. Jaydev, the old style suicide bombing is passé now. And we have more and more of these kind of lone wolf or sleeper cell attacks that are going to happen. And the drone attacks which you described today is practically possible. But then you need somebody to assemble it, you need somebody to arm it, you need somebody to provide the ammunition and all that stuff. And for that, the most educated people will be used. A few years ago, about almost I think 10 years ago, I'm still trying to search for the screenshot of that article in Deccan Chronicle. I had tweeted this same thing when Iran issued ultimatum to the United States over that uranium issue they had about the processing, that they will attack every US asset across the world. So at that time, I tweeted to the then Cyberabad Commissionerate, Mr. PC Sajjanar, who's now the Commissioner of Hyderabad, as to whether did the Cyberabad Commissionerate check all the American establishments in the Hyderabad city. It included Microsoft's huge, massive campus in Gachibowli, Google, Meta, and all other American companies, hundreds of them. Did they check the background of the employees working there? Because we know what happened in Al-Falah University. Did they check the security response availability? Because most of them are private security guards who don't even have a small weapon with them. Forget AK-47s or even pistols or anything for that matter to tackle these terrorists. Do they have knowledge how to defuse a bomb, or at least how to trace a bomb, how to check for a bomb? They just do a cursory screening. You know what happened? The entire ecosystem piled onto me, including Asaduddin Owaisi. Unfortunately, what happened was the Cyberabad Commissionerate replied to my tweet saying, yes, we are checking. That was enough to set off the secular brigade around Hyderabad city. They all piled on to me saying, you are accusing one community of being terrorist and all that. What happened in Al-Falah University? Simple. So that evening, I was on most of the news channels, including those days Times Now and NDTV and all that. They asked me, they accused me of being Islamophobic and all that kind of stuff. But I said, look, there is a threat, and one day you will realize that it is a real threat. And I'm not saying I'm glad, but I'm sure that the Delhi blast incident has opened the eyes of people that every Indian company needs to check the background of their employees. They need to have secure security systems to respond to modern attacks like what you're describing right now. Because a sleeper cell will look very like a normal employee, like an Al-Falah doctor, till then they hit a terrorist mode. And the way you're talking about the weapons being bought, you don't need Hamas to do all this. You just need some smart engineering students who can assemble all this, or smart engineers to assemble all this, and they can do it. As I described to you at the start of the story or our discussion, the Naxalite movement used engineers in the leadership roles and even in the dalams or cadres to ensure that they assemble the IEDs and other explosive devices. And that is where the expertise is needed. So we need to check every drone being sold, every drone being smuggled into the country. There needs to be a constant follow-up. There needs to be a background check on every employee. I don't mind even my background being checked, but everyone's background needs to be checked out. What kind of affiliation does this person have? Any international travel that shows up Turkey or any other such suspicious location would immediately raise a red flag. But then, knowing our establishment, knowing our state establishment, especially, I can say NIA is on top, no issues about them. But many of the state governments are sympathetic to these people, the sleeper cells. They say, oh, no, 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 we won't touch them. They are minorities. They need protection. They're secular. Till the Delhi like bomb blast hits you, or the drone attacks which you're talking. God forbid it should never happen. Never happen. But what happens if it happens? That's a question.
Yeah. Also, Suresh, Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, He went to Qatar and he met Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad, and it is for strengthening the bilateral relationship. And also, so do you see anything more to this meeting with Qatar?
Qatar is a key linchpin in this entire effort. On one hand, they talk of peace. On the other hand, they have they are the headquarters for the Muslim Brotherhood, the ISIS, Hamas, and everybody. And they were also house, ironically, the largest US base outside the United States. I mean, you can't get it more ironical than this. And this is what Qatar is all about. Very small local population, a huge amount of money because of the gas reserves they hold. And they have literally purchased, or rather invested, in every university across the world. You see in the US, all the major universities have endowments attributed to the Qatari establishment. They even gifted a lavish aircraft to President Donald Trump. And we know how the way Donald Trump was received. So Qatar is a key player in this entire thing. Like it or not, we need to be on the right side with them to ensure that nothing happens to us, nothing happens to India, because the Qataris have a huge hold, huge influence on those people sitting in Qatar. I'm not talking of the Qatari people, but the organization which I earlier spoke of, especially the Al Qaeda, ISIS, and other terror groups. If they decided to support, or they decide to fund, or they decide to arm some of the terror groups that are operating in Pakistan to enter India and try and do the tricks which you earlier described, a drone attack or something very similar, then we have a problem in hand. And Qatar knows when to tighten the screws and when to loosen them. And that's what they've done with Al Qaeda, they did with ISIS, they did with Muslim Brotherhood, and now they're done with Hamas. They know they are the funders for them, and they give them the accommodation to exist a luxurious life in Qatar, and they also know when to withdraw that. So Jaishankar ji going there to Qatar and meeting the emir and all, it's a very good sign. But at the end of the day, we need to ensure that Qatar also knows our part of the story, that we are a nation which is a victim of terrorism, not just Israel. We also face terror attacks on almost on a daily or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And we need to ensure that they don't, the Qatari government knows about it. And I guess that was what was discussed, because overall what we get is a normal MEA press note, which talks of the usual stuff. But there must be a lot of things discussed which is not shared in the public domain.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting session, Sureshji, and thank you again for coming to our show. We will see you again next week. Until then, Jai Hind and Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Hind.